welcome to the A Little Spoon Kitchen. Today we are making one of my favorite things to make around holidays. They're a perfect breakfast and a fantastic treat for the family, cinnamon rolls. I make brioche from scratch and the filling from scratch. I have my own frosting recipe, so everything is just from the base up. If you want to supplant any of these things with your own frosting or your own style of filling or whatever, that is absolutely fine. If you're really just here because you want to learn how to make brioche, because you have no idea what you're doing and nix the rest of the cinnamon roll thing, you just want to learn the brioche part, absolutely fine. I know I've got some people with me here today during the live portion of this that are going to be literally following me just for the brioche, and the cinnamon roll thing is a maybe at a future date. So take any part of this that you want and use that in your cooking journey. Let's see, we're doing this kind of out of order. If you are finding this, I don't know, a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, you're stumbling upon this video on YouTube, it was originally a live. And I am going to be talking to people over here, so it might feel a little weird if I'm like all of a sudden having jokes and answering questions. But I do have some people that are watching me live, that are cooking with me, that will have questions because they do intend to make this at a later date. So they might ask some questions and I will be answering those questions. And maybe that will be helpful for you if something pops into your head and then I'm answering it literally 10 minutes later. If that does not happen and you are watching this video, you are making the cinnamon rolls or just the brioche, and you do have questions and it was not answered by me or by me answering a question, go ahead and just pop that in the comments and I will find it at some point and I will answer your question if you have that later on. Today I said I was making these backwards and I kind of am. In order to fit everything into a single stream, I kind of have to make the cinnamon rolls first and then the brioche kind of in between. Because the cinnamon rolls do need to proof for about 30 to 45 minutes before I can put them in the oven. And because of that kind of dead air in the middle, I'm going to roll out our cinnamon rolls, get them all prepped and ready, have them proofing, and then I'll show you guys how to make brioche. I did pre-make some brioche, so I've got that here in this stand mixer bowl right here. And then I will have essentially a fresh batch go in that after I'm done getting all of those ready. I'll clean this out and then we can start our brioche in this again. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna move that. So I don't know if you can see, this is where we are in our brioche. She's been in the refrigerator for about 24 hours now. And it is, like you can see, it's not like, it's pretty stable, pretty thickened. There's a lot of butter in this dough. And so it sitting in the refrigerator gets it really, really nice and stiff, which makes it great for rolling. You will see that there is a huge difference. I'm about to scrape this out of this bowl. You will see a huge difference in what this looks like coming out of the refrigerator versus when I'm first making it and it's just starting its essentially starting its proofing journey. So there's gonna be a wild difference. It's gonna be really cool actually. Oh, there you go. We've got the overhead cam in here. So that's what that looks like. I'm going to get this all together. The first thing that I'm gonna do actually, now that we've looked at what that looks like, I'm just gonna let that sit there for a second. I've got a 9 by 13 inch pan here, which is, let's throw out our metric here to make sure that anybody that's with me can get that. Let's see. That is a 23 by 33 centimeter pan. And we're actually going to just take a little bit of butter. You don't need a lot. And you can, if you really want, you can spray it with like a spray or throw down some parchment or something like that. But essentially we just want to make sure that our cinnamon rolls, they obviously are going to get filled with a brown sugar and cinnamon mixture, and that will come out and liquefy a little bit while they're baking. And we don't want that getting stuck to the pan and then you not being able to get your cinnamon rolls out of a pan. And so we are going to use butter to create a nice barrier of fat to prevent that sugar from sticking to this pan. I feel seen. Yeah, we use metric here. I tend to use metric, maybe not in measurement when it comes to I still use inches and feet and all that kind of stuff, but I prefer to use metric weight for measuring ingredients. Even with liquids, just because the consistency is so much better when you have metric. Americans using like volumetric measurement it's very inconsistent. It's probably fine if you're cooking, but with baking, it is not great. Okay, so we've got our prepared pan over here. These cinnamon rolls are gonna be so much larger than I'm used to. I usually roll them out into an even bigger rectangle than what is requested in the instructions. And then I cut them even smaller. And I make a whole bunch of them because the kids eat them and they don't need to have like a really big cinnamon roll for breakfast. So I almost half them, and I have like 2 trays. But we're gonna have some pretty large cinnamon rolls today. This recipe makes 12 to 15, depending on how you wanna cut them. I'm planning on making 12 today. Nice. Okay, so we've got this buttered, and now I'm gonna make the filling, and then we're gonna move into rolling. Oh, and I also I've got some butter back there if you can see it behind me. That is room temperature butter, and I will be measuring that so that we have something to spread onto our rolled dough. But I do want to have kind of everything ready so that once I've got the dough rolled out, that I can immediately just start making the cinnamon rolls, and I haven't like rolled out dough and then I have to make something. It's better to just have all of your stuff for a step ready to go and have your station set up, and then make the thing, and then you can kind of clean up and start the next thing. So that's essentially what we're doing today. For the filling, you want to have a cup of brown sugar packed, which is essentially 180 grams of brown sugar. I do have my kitchen scale. I am probably gonna stay away from measuring cups today, and I will more likely than not be using my kitchen scale, and then maybe measuring spoons for some of my liquid ingredients, just because sometimes it's hard to pour correctly, and I always end up adding too much. But we are gonna use metric. Okay, I said 180 grams, so I'm just gonna spoon 180 grams into this bowl. This originally was light brown sugar, but then I added some extra molasses to it, so now it's kind of just like in between light and dark brown sugar. It does not matter if you use light brown sugar or dark brown sugar for this recipe. Use what you like. If I had to choose, I would probably choose a dark brown sugar, just because it's gonna be a richer, more like molassesy, caramelly, deep flavor, but it's unnecessary. You just use whatever. Just use whatever you want. Okay, we are going to need 2.5 tablespoons or 13.5 grams of cinnamon, ground cinnamon. So we're gonna do 13.5 grams. It is a lot of cinnamon. They are cinnamon rolls after all. Come on. I just have this feeling that it's gonna like puff out and I'm gonna have way too much. There you go. Okay. There's that. And then we're also gonna have some salt and some fresh grated nutmeg. It's supposed to be about 1/4 teaspoon. I'm gonna eyeball this just because I really like nutmeg, and if I have a little too much, I don't mind. Every time. Where am I going? That way. That way? Kind of good. Okay. So it's about 0.3 grams of grated nutmeg. And if any of you have kitchen scales at home, you know that some of them like just don't measure anything. If the original measurement is less than half a gram, if you go over a gram, then it will give you all of those like 1/10 of a gram measurements. But under half a gram, it just like doesn't show up. So we're just gonna eyeball this because I really don't feel like it. But it's supposed to be 0.3 grams. Okay, we're gonna call that good. It's the equivalent of a 1/4 teaspoon, I believe. Yeah, 1/4 teaspoon. And then we're also gonna do a 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt. I use Diamond Crystal kosher salt. We discuss this in literally every cooking stream that I do. You have to weigh your salt. Please weigh your salt. I know that I give volumetric measurement, but Diamond Crystal kosher salt has a very different crystalline structure than other salts, even other kosher salts. So you can't even just say kosher salt. Morton salt is 30% saltier than Diamond Crystal kosher salt. So if you're using a teaspoon of Diamond Crystal kosher salt and a teaspoon of Morton, your food will be 30% saltier if you use Morton, because if you're going by volume instead of weight. So just be careful. I do suggest you weigh your salt. If it's table salt, it will be even saltier and it is denser. So if you're weighing it, you will not mess this up. But if you are not weighing it, it could be disastrous. Please be careful out there. There's a reason that you see salt to taste on everything. It's because we as cooks and chefs know that if we actually try to give a measurement and then don't give a specific brand of salt, it can be a problem. And so most of the time it's like we start with like a really small bit of salt and then just say salt to taste so that you can finish it without having to figure out the weight and all that kind of stuff. You like Maldon sea salt? I used to live there. That's really cool. Maldon sea salt's good. I do have some of that, but I use it as a finishing salt. Oh my gosh. Okay, somebody just said, is it true you need to use brown sugar even if you're already a very sweet person and you just mix it with your fingers? Yes. Yes, it is true. It is true. Nice. Very nice. Okay, so we've got our salt. We're looking at 1/2 teaspoon of Diamond Crystal kosher salt. It's 2.2 grams of kosher salt. That is, I'm gonna put this over here because I'm gonna use that later. And now we're going to mix until this turns crumbly. The cinnamon is really gonna surround that sugar and absorb a lot of the moisture that's in the brown sugar, and it will get like nice and crumbly and sandy, and that is what we want. I would normally use my hands to just kind of do this and break up clumps, but trying to not disappear from view and wash my hands every 10 seconds, which I will probably do today. I don't particularly like the feeling of having butter on my hands. And we're gonna be working with a lot of butter today. So I'm probably gonna go through a lot of like wet paper towels and stuff, just trying to like get that feeling off, but we'll make it work. Okay, so this is what we're working with. You can see kind of like sandy. Stick that off to the side. And now it's time to start rolling. Okay, so we've got our brioche. Something that I really like about this brioche is it's very hydrated, which lets you play. If you need extra flour, if you need that, that is okay, and you can use it when you're rolling and kind of like keeping it from sticking to your surfaces and stuff like that. I do have, if you have granite or quartz countertops, I do feel like dough likes to really stick more to those and like kind of sweat because it's such a like non-porous kind of surface. If it's wood, it's usually like a little easier to kind of really roll that out and not have things stick as readily, but we use what we have. And so let's see if you can, I really should let me get a scraper here. We'll use this guy. Oh geez, I'm missing a lot of stuff. Okay. So you can see how structured that is. And I'll show you even more once we have this out of here. Here, let's, left-handed, okay. There we go. Okay, so that's our dough. But it's got a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's got a lot of, because of how hydrated it is, it's just like takes flour without it really messing up the mouthfeel of the end result. Like it stays pretty soft, which is really nice. Because I do feel like a lot of cinnamon rolls that I've seen, the texture is just so bready and it's not really light and it's not very soft. And that could be for a lot of reasons. It could be just because they want you to be able to work with the brioche right from the start. I've seen a lot of stuff where you're pretty much making it right from the start and it's not going into the refrigerator to cold proof. And so it's almost unworkable when it's just made, and that can be rough. And so a lot of the times people will use too much flour kind of right from the start, in my opinion. And then the texture is just not where I want it to be by the time that they're done baking. And this way you kind of get the best of both worlds. Best of all the worlds. Essentially what I'm doing right now, so I want this to be a rectangle, right? We want a rectangle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of spread this out, and then I'm going to form a rectangle and then start rolling. And it's going to give me a better shape instead of it being kind of round, which we don't want. And what I'm going to do once I've got it stretched a little bit is I'm going to actually fold it. We're going to do a trifold, and then we're going to do another trifold. This is what I do with my biscuits. When I do biscuits, I do trifolds. Okay, so there you go. So we've got this, and then we're going to do it one more time. And we're kind of going to make, and so now we've kind of got this shape that looks very rectangular right off the bat. Okay, we've got something that looks kind of like a rectangle. You're still going to have rounded edges. It's still something that you're going to kind of have to work around. But now it didn't start in a circle. Like it came out of a bowl, it's in a blob, it's in a circle. And this way we can kind of combat that and we can work against that. So we are looking to roll this out to 14 by 18, which is 14 by 18 inches, sorry, which is 36 by 46 centimeters, which is fairly large. If your dough, when you make it, like don't freak out. If it starts kind of contracting back into itself, it's just because you're working it and it came from the refrigerator and it's really chilled and the gluten hasn't fully relaxed. The warmer it gets, the more it will kind of like stay once you're done rolling. That butter just needs to soften up a bit, but it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. It is satisfying to roll dough. I agree. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm just trying to make sure that I'm kind of pushing my edges out, that I'm maintaining this kind of rectangular shape as I go. And I'm basically rolling in the shape of a rectangle. So I'm not kind of twisting and rolling as I go, which makes a circle. I'm trying to keep this rectangular shape. And you will see me, you'll see me trying to flip this once it gets big. Well, I'll get to talk about how to get this dough rolled up over a rolling pin. But I do have a nice, I like metal, metal. I think they say cleaner, but I have a metal ruler right here. And I'm just going to use that to kind of keep an eye on how long. It is exactly the width that I want it to be. So I will sit here and I'll do height or length. I guess, what is it? This is width, or length and width. We're not doing height because that would be this way, and that's not where we're going. So essentially I've got my 18 here, which is my 46, and then I'll be going to 14, which is somewhere up here, which I need to go a little bit longer. So we're almost there. Look at that, already almost where we want to be. And something that you do have to keep in mind too when you're rolling, because this is going to start sticking underneath, is you're going to have to make sure that we're kind of putting flour on top, flipping it, or just kind of putting flour down and then flipping it back over. Like, that's also fine. But as you roll, you'll notice the edges are going to kind of stay a little like kind of puffed and the incorrect height. And then it's going to start to get really thin. And so you kind of have to be aware of that. Be aware of the pressure that you're using. Be aware of the fact that you need to be rolling down your edges just as much as you're rolling out the inside. Because as you roll the edges, it's going to kind of bulge the bread or the dough out this way. And then you get thicker edges than you do the inside. And we don't want that to happen. So just try to keep like a uniform pressure throughout. And then make sure that you are, in fact, kind of running over the edges as you go. I do want to, this is getting super sticky over here. So I'm going to actually flip this now. We're going to get some of the flour on it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just roll, lift, and then bring that back. These are the days I always get flour everywhere. Have to make sure that I'm wearing an apron. You're almost where we want to be. I believe I've got the correct width at this point. Okay, definitely. And we are at 14 throughout. Okay, so this is where we want to be. But I am going to just kind of check because once I start lifting, it is going to kind of constrict a little bit. I want to make sure that we are in a good place, because once you start rolling it up, it is going to try to kind of come back in as you're rolling, and you're going to have to kind of just make sure that you're kind of gently pulling outward as well as you start rolling your cinnamon roll. So you saw that was like way here, but then as I lifted, it went. So you're kind of going a little bit over to make sure that you're staying where you want to be. This is perfect. And I still have kind of my edges here, right? So I've got my rectangle. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, I need 10 tablespoons, about 142 grams of butter for this. We are going to literally just plop it on this plate. I have been known to use less butter than this. It's really just about spreading a good layer of butter so that it coats the whole, almost the whole piece. Probably will only just do this much. That's good. Okay. All this butter. There's a lot of butter in a cinnamon roll. Do not be fooled. They are ooey and gooey and delicious for a reason. When measuring butter, you just gotta measure with your heart. It depends on what you're making. If you're just filling something, absolutely. If you're making a cake or cookies, maybe not. A couple extra tablespoons of butter and your cookies are flat. So I'm basically just wanting to have a nice, thin, even layer of butter. It will pull a little bit. That's okay. Don't worry about it. My house is kind of chilly, so this butter is a little bit less spreadable than I would like, but that is okay. Oh, quick update. For anybody who is making brioche with me today, please make sure that your eggs and your butter are out of your refrigerator. You want them to be as warm as you are comfortable with. But you want them to be almost room temperature. And if you forgot to do that, you can just put your eggs in a bowl of like tap water, and they won't be that cold anymore. And it's basically just a proofing thing. The warmer your ingredients, the better proof you're gonna get. Cold inhibits fermentation. And so you're just kind of trying to give everything a jump start, and you don't want to kind of stop that from happening. So go ahead and take your eggs, take your butter out so that you're ready by the time we get there, because we're about 20 minutes out, maybe a little less. What I'm going to do is I'm going to butter all the way to the edge that's closest to me, and I'm going to leave the back about 1/2 inch. So let's see, that's like what, 1.3 centimeters? You're going to have this back section is not going to have any butter on it. I'm not even going to use all this butter. I'm actually pretty comfy with the layer I have going here. But you want to go all the way to the edges. All the way to all of the other edges. Okay. There we go. Now we're going to put our filling down, and you're just going to sprinkle it over the top, and you're going to want to coat as best you can in a really even layer. What I try to do is just kind of take handfuls and spread it out. And if I've got like little mounds and things like that in places, that's fine. I'll smooth it out. But I'm trying to just get to like every surface in a little bit of a way. There we go. Or like have it all covered. There we go. All the way to the edge. If you don't go all the way to the edge with the butter and the filling, then those end cinnamon rolls are just not going to be as good. And so now because I have those little kind of mounds, I can push them around where I want them to be because I didn't just pour it all into the center and then try to spread out. I've seen a number of recipes where you mix the butter and the brown sugar and the cinnamon together and it makes like a paste and then you spread the paste. I've tried that. I have never been successful with a filling like that. It always ends up oozing out of the cinnamon roll, which is sad because I want to taste the filling. You will lose some of it over the edges. That's okay. That's the breaks. Them's the breaks. It happens. It's not a huge deal. There we go. The reason that we've left, for those of you who are curious, the reason that we've left this section without butter is because if there's butter, then the dough will not stick to the outside of the dough, right? Like we're rolling it. And so I've got exposed dough and I want exposed dough to hit exposed dough. If we have butter there, they will come apart when baking and then they'll kind of like they won't be a roll. They'll kind of like the end will kind of spring off. And we don't want that to happen. So this way the dough will actually bake into itself. You can pinch it into itself. And the cinnamon rolls will stay together as a roll. And that's what we want. Okay. Et voila, we have all of our cinnamon spread. I'm gonna move everything out of the way because this is about to get interesting. It isn't already. Okay, we're gonna do, I like to use thread. I like to use thread to cut my cinnamon rolls. I know a lot of people, like this is like a contentious, the tea in the cinnamon roll world is all about how you are cutting your cinnamon rolls. I like to use thread. I use jewelry thread. I guess let me show the whole roll here. I've had this for a really long time. I just keep it in a plastic bag. You can see it's already got like flour on it, but I've only ever used it for cooking. It's really sturdy. It's specifically meant for jewelry. So it's like, I want to say it's a thicker gauge, but it's not wire, but it's thicker than if you were using thread for like stitching or anything like that. And it almost acts like wire, but it's still thread. And this I found really, really good for cutting cinnamon rolls. Other people might roll and then cut with a knife. If you are going to roll and cut with a knife, you're gonna wanna use something that is serrated, right? Something kind of like this. Because if you try to cut with a knife that has a flat edge or a straight edge, it will actually compress your cinnamon rolls down and things will start to kind of like the centers will push out as you're going and it's not going to be pretty. So use something serrated if you do plan to do that. The other way, there are 3 ways that you can cut cinnamon rolls. The other way is to pre-cut strips and then roll your strips up. But you have to be really precise when you do that because if your strips are not cut perfectly straight, then you get kind of like wonky, like it'll get like really big and then really small or like off to one side. And then the last cinnamon roll is like shaped kind of like more like a croissant because you like had too wide here and then too narrow cuts here or something like that. And so it can get a little bit weird. I would absolutely tell you to use a ruler or something to guide you if you are cutting strips that way. But cutting strips and then rolling is also an option. Today I'm going to be using the thread. You can see how that works. Let's roll these guys up. You're so hungry right now. Okay, so the way that you roll a cinnamon roll, you're gonna start from your edges and you kind of just pick up and roll over. Pick up and roll over, pick up and roll over, pick up and roll over. You're picking up and placing down. We're not pushing. If you try to push the way that you would with like a Play-Doh, then it is going to be too loose and it'll start folding over itself in like really weird ways. We're also not tucking. If you try to pick it up and like tuck it, kind of like the way, like I know we did pierogi for our last cook along, and I had said kind of like pushing the filling and kind of tucking it. We don't want to do the tucking because then you're going to make them too tight. And if the rolls are too tight, then the centers are going to completely expand up and out while they're baking and it gets a little wonky. So we don't want to do that either. You're going to just kind of gently pick it up and fold it over, pick it up, and fold it over from side to side. Okay. We want them to be right in the middle. Okay. As you can see, like the brioche is still really soft, right? And it will get even more so as it proofs, but it's definitely workable. And we didn't add that much flour to it, which is nice. Okay, so we have rolls. I had kind of said earlier that you're kind of just gonna spread them out a little bit. You've got plenty of length. There we go. I'm gonna just kind of sweep my spot clean, my space clean a little bit here, so we don't have cinnamon and sugar all over the outside of them. And then I'm gonna grab my buttered tray. I'm just gonna sit them here, let it wait for me, or sit it here, let it wait for me, so that it's ready for the cinnamon rolls. Okay, so what I personally like to do, because math is not gonna work for me, eyeballing it is not gonna work for me, I like to still use this ruler, and I set it up and I'm going 1.5 inches per. I guess how much is that? That is 3.8 centimeters per. And so I'm kind of just gonna hit, you know, this 1.5, 3, 4.5, 6, and kind of work my way along. And I'm going to kind of place an indentation exactly where I'm going to then cut, so that I know that they are at least close to uniform. Because if I eyeballed this, none of them would look the same. Can't do that here. Okay, so we've got here, here, and I'm just kind of placing just a little indent. I'm not fully cutting them. I'm not doing anything but giving me a guide for where I'm going to be. Okay. And now what I'm gonna do So I'm going to take this thread, but you cannot see what I'm doing. Can you see what I'm doing? Okay, cool. I'm going to take this thread and I'm going to it's almost like if you were going to like truss a roast or something like that. You're going to kind of run it underneath, and then you're going to just cross over your two pieces. Don't worry, you'll be able to see it in the next one, and then just pull through. And that's your cinnamon roll here. We're gonna put her there in the corner here. Here we go, here's another one. You can probably see better. We're gonna run it under real fast. I am left-handed. I might want to start from the other side. And then we're going to cross and pull. And it just cuts it. Okay, let's try that again. So we're gonna push under real fast, cross. I feel like I'm hiding everything from you guys. And pull. I'm gonna start from this side. Can you even see this side? No, you can't see this side either. Can you back up the camera a little bit? I'm out of frame. Sorry for the yelling, guys. He's just in another room. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're gonna, again, basically what we were doing, we've already used this. We're gonna kind of pull under real fast, and then we're going to cross, okay? And then pull, and that's a roll. Okay, we're gonna pull, go under real fast, cross, and then pull. Okay, that's gonna go in the center, because that's gonna be the smallest one. We're sticking. Okay, let's do this again. We're gonna go under real fast, we're gonna cross, and then pull. Going too fast, okay. I need to wash my hands real quick. I mentioned I don't like butter, or at least wipe them. We're gonna wipe my hands. Okay. Can we actually see? I feel like we can't see. Thank you, that's fine, just leave that there. Thank you. Okay, so we're under, we're crossing. I like to go from right to left on this, but we're gonna make this work. And then we're just pulling. And then that's our roll, right? And we're gonna do it again. And go under, get it adjusted, get it exactly where you want it to be, cross, pull. And then that's our roll. And you'll notice, here, let me pull that back out. You'll notice that our dough is already sticking to itself, right? Because we haven't buttered it. Now let's do another one. Okay. We're up, crossing, pulling, and there's another roll. These cinnamon rolls, more likely than not, will bake upward just because they look like they're going to be a little squished in there. Okay, here we go. Up. Got cross. And there's our roll. Okay. One more cut. Cross, pull, and our last two rolls. Okay? Easy enough. When it's not rocket science. You've got this. I promise. You will notice I still kind of have some small ones. Even with all of the measuring, I still have some small ones. So, you know bread and you don't know this? Well, I'm glad. I'm glad that that's helpful. I made the dough with butter.
You had new people in here that like, oh, this subscriber is great, it's awesome. Really good messaging.
Cool. Okay. We've got our rolls. You will notice that I've got the smaller ones kind of in the center here. I want to have the smaller ones in the center because they are going to bake the fastest. And if we have them on the outside, they will overbake. So you want to rearrange it after you've got everything in a pan. Take a look at what you've got in there. And if you have like any like ones that are like much larger than the others or something like that, and they're in the center, just move them and switch out so that their smaller ones are in the middle and that your larger ones are on the outside. And that's kind of how you want it, because the larger ones are going to take longer to bake than the smaller ones. I know that sounds really obvious when I say it, but very important. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to cover these with, I'm going to cover these with this. I might actually have to break a seam on this to get this to work. I use shower caps when I'm proofing. You can use like a press and seal or like cling film or cling wrap or something like that, and that does work. I just find that I get a better seal because it's got kind of the stretch going on. I will probably have to pop a seam for this. There we go. Yep. But that's okay. And now I've got like a pretty good seal, and they're just gonna sit. Okay. It's easier when you're using like the round mixer bowl that I've got over there. That's definitely easier to get the shower cap onto it, but this works too. I feel like every time I try to use cling film on metal, it like doesn't stick right and it slides all over the place, and I get really frustrated. And this is just easier. So now these are going to sit off to the side. My house has warmed up considerably. I thought that I was going to have to use this, and I might still do it maybe just for the brioche itself. But let me tell you, I'm going to share this with you guys. So this is actually a mat for seedlings, for starting plants and taking plants from seed into the little like seedling saplings kind of a thing before you plant them. This is so much cheaper than buying a proofing mat. Proofing mats are they're so stupid expensive. This will give you a temperature that's 10 degrees warmer than whatever environment you're in. So if you keep your house at a relatively comfortable temperature for yourself, and not like, hey, I need my house to be a freezer at all times. Like if you're that like, I just like to be comfortable, maybe have a light sweater or something like that in your home, then this will be great because it brings your temperature up. I guess it's like what is that? If we're equating this, we're just gonna cut it in half for ease. 10 degrees difference from your temperature in Fahrenheit and closer to 5 degree difference in Celsius from the current temperature of your home. So it's great for proofing. Like if your home is a little chilly, you can, what I like to do is I'll set whatever bowl I'm having something proofing in or pan I'm having something proofing in, and I'll plug this in. It just immediately starts warming and you can set it down. If it's a bowl that's kind of high, I will place a towel over the top of it to just kind of keep that heat inside. And I use this. And I want to say this is something like 15 to 20 bucks. The proofing mats for bakers are like so much more expensive. We're gonna move this off to the side now. And I'm gonna clean up my space a little bit, and then we're going to start the brioche. So Bethany, I know you're cooking brioche with me today. If anybody else is making brioche, now is the time to start assembling your stuff and getting yourself in a position to cook.
Yeah. Yes, yeah.
All right, let's get this out of the way. Yes, please. I'm gonna bring out my stand mixer. We're gonna use the big stand mixer today. That's cognac. A lot of the recipes that I use that are simple. I use I have two KitchenAid mixers. One is 14 years old, and the other one is new. And I tend to use the classic one for smaller stuff, but the old one's motor is like going. I need to get it worked on. So today we're gonna use the big guy because that motor is very nice. What do I use to clean or disinfect my countertops? I use like sanitizing wipes and then water afterward because it feels weird to like sanitize and then just leave whatever was on it to sanitize it. It's hanging out. Yeah, somebody asked where the alcohol was. There's cognac. It goes in the frosting. But it's optional. You don't have to use the cognac if you don't want to. I like it. You've proofed bread before by putting it on top of your gaming PC? That's ingenious. I love it. I like it. I like it. Oh, how do I like my KitchenAid? Ours burned out doing sourdough. We were thinking about switching to Bosch. I don't know much about any mixers other than KitchenAid. It's just what I've always had in my kitchen. I believe my family has a Bosch mixer that we used for years, and I don't remember having any complaints with it. I will say that with the KitchenAid mixers, I prefer the tilt head mixers over these kind of like you inset the mixing bowl and then kind of do one of these to get it to like attach or like get into the right position. And I do not prefer that because I feel like I have less access to what I'm trying to make. Like getting down in the bowl to like scrape it and stuff like that. You almost have to take it off. And it's kind of a frustrating thing to get it in and out of these little arms here. So I do prefer the tilt heads if you are looking for something. But if the motor is going, does it struggle more on lower speeds? No. Do you mean which mixer? Like the classic or this commercial one that I've got? Tilt head mixers, a stronger power. You know, I don't know the answer to that. I do feel like the motor in this guy is stronger than the tilt head mixer. And I don't know, like, I mean, it might sound like it's struggling, but on a lower setting, I doubt that it's struggling as much as it would be trying to push around ingredients at a higher rate. Especially if those ingredients are thicker. If the ingredients are really thick, trying to get that motor to go really fast is going to make it struggle and work much harder than if you were mixing on a lower speed. So.
Did you read double stick?
No, I don't know what you're looking at.
Oh.
Aw, thanks, Noble. That was really nice. My husband just read your message to me. He was like, "Did you see it?" And I was like, "I didn't see anything." Yeah, I think that a lot of recipes on the internet, even if they are good recipes, I don't feel like the instruction in there is there, and I don't feel like a lot of the notes that are required to really understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. Like for me, context is just as important as actually following the instructions and following a recipe. And so I try to give as much as possible. And I do think that's really important, especially if someone's actually trying to learn how to cook and they're not just trying to follow a recipe. So thank you very much for your message. That's very nice. Cross Hunter, I have found that to be true, that the bowl with the mixers with the bowl lift require a bunch more volume, like it needs to have more in it to mix properly. So if I'm doing smaller batches of stuff, the classic is absolutely the better one. And I know this one says commercial on it. They also have these that are like not commercial. Like they have a classic that's not a tilt head. I believe there's one, I think it's professional, is in between commercial and classic. And that one also is like this kind of arm stand situation. And I have found that the bowls, like they don't mix as well with less ingredients. It doesn't feel like it to me. Even adjusting, like we've figured out how to adjust the screw here to get it to the right height, because there was so much clearance between the bowl when we first got it. Actually, speaking of which, I should probably adjust this. Oh, it's over here. When we first got it, it like had so much distance between the bottom of the bowl that it like wasn't mixing anything in the bottom of the bowl, and we had to really mess with it. Yeah. So I guess if you're curious, I'll just do this straight to you. So if you tilt and you head to the right and you turn to the right, that's going to adjust this guy here. All the way, I've found for my machine, all the way to the left, as far as you can go, is good for the whisk attachment and for the dough hook attachment. But the beater attachment needs to be closer to 12 o'clock and like straight up and down. It needs to be closer to vertical, but then like a horizontal is better for the other two. And so I have to adjust in between using different attachments to make it work. Otherwise, like the clearance is weird. Whatever. But that's how you adjust it. If you feel like it's not mixing in the bottom of the bowl, mess with this screw and tighten it to bring that the arms up a little higher. You dream of making decent brownies one day, followed many recipes, can't make it flaky. Do you mean the top, having that crispy, shiny, flaky top on a brownie? That's all in how you're beating your eggs. Yeah, that's in how you're beating your eggs. There are people out there. Look online for, like, I probably would, what would I even call that? Like shiny, flaky topped brownies or something like that. And it'll give you recipes where people are actually doing that on purpose. I also prefer to use the bigger bowl on this guy. Here, I'll show you guys in a second. Ugh. So I have the really big bowl, and then I have this guy, and they're literally the same. They're the same thing. Just this one has a higher wall. And I've found that trying to use this is slightly terrifying. I prefer using the larger one, and when I'm adding ingredients a little at a time, if I'm just kind of like dumping ingredients into a bowl and letting them kind of whip or whisk up, then I'm fine using this guy. But the big guy, when I prefer the big one when I'm doing like smaller batches of ingredients, because if I use this, there is absolutely no clearance between the edge of the bowl and the attachment that's going. And I've pulled my hand in by accident and like almost like I squashed my nail in between, like my nail bed in between the attachment and the bowl, because there's no clearance. They're like neck and neck. So usually on bowls, especially with the tilt head, you've got like space where you can kind of like dump stuff in, but it will catch you right at the very top. Like there's no difference between the top and like where that attachment is hitting. And that was a scary moment for me. It was a scary moment. So I got the bigger bowl is better and less terrifying. You've definitely done that before? Yeah, it's not great. It's not great. The spatula getting caught. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, actually, what am I even doing? Let's get started on this brioche. I'm sorry, friends. I know some of you guys are actually waiting for me to do this. So we've got flour. Let's get the rest of our ingredients. Got it all over here. I am going to do some cooking just behind me, just to heat up the milk, because I need to heat that. Get this guy. I'm going to start blooming my yeast in this bowl. And then once that's bloomed, we can chat in between. Like we have 10 minutes where we're gonna wait for this yeast to bloom before we start adding flour and adding eggs and all that kind of stuff. So we've got some time. Let's actually get started. We're gonna bloom the yeast in here and then let that kind of sit for a little bit. And then we're gonna start adding in our eggs, adding in our salt, adding in our flour, and really kind of getting this to go. We are going to need some warm milk. Oh, I don't have the pot. Got a little pot here, and we're gonna add some milk. Oh, I am gonna use a measuring cup today. We're gonna add milk and honey to this pot. Brioche is actually quite sweet, and that sweetness does get spread throughout, but it does have quite a bit of sweetness in it. We're using 3/4 cup of milk and 1/4 cup of honey, which is essentially 180 milliliters of warm milk, and 85 grams of honey. So I guess that's a really good example of the difference between volumetric measurement and going by the actual weight of something in grams, or by the weight in grams. So honey, 1/4 cup, right? 1/4 cup. If you were using this guy right here, 1/4 cup of water is actually going to weigh 60 grams. But because honey is so viscous, if I do exactly 1/4 cup in here, it actually weighs 85 grams, not 60. And so if you were just kind of saying, oh, I'm just immediately converting in my head, it's 60 milliliters of water, weighs 60 grams, I'm just going to weigh out 60 grams of honey, you're actually undercutting yourself. And so knowing that honey, because it's more viscous, actually weighs more, and that it actually, like, I know it feels weird, but like that difference is really big. And so it's really important to make sure that you're weighing your ingredients and you're not just kind of like going through everything. The land of milk and honey, that would probably be mostly made out of brioche. I do struggle to get the foil off the top of the milk. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. Okay. So let's do our milk. I'm going to do slightly more milk than I normally would, just because I know I'm going to cook some of this off, but not by a lot. Okay, so let's do this. I am going to use a measuring cup for this one. I am going to kind of let it kind of tension up and go slightly higher than the edge. Because we are warming this up, it is going to reduce just slightly. You'll just get a little bit of steam off of it. And so I'm kind of just giving like a tad bit more milk than the measurement suggests, because it is going to steam and I am going to lose some of that moisture. And then we're also going to do our honey. And I'm going to do something different than what the recipe says today. So in the recipe, I say to kind of mix the milk and the honey together and warm them together and warm them to a certain temperature and then pour them into the bowl. You kind of warm it to a higher temperature than what you're going to want, because once it hits the cold metal, the temperature is going to come down. It's going to temper like a lot. And you need to have your temperature in order for your yeast to bloom between a specific range. And so you kind of have it higher You bring it to a higher temperature and then it'll drop to within the range that you need it to be to kind of bloom. And that's like a little nuts. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to bring this to an even higher temperature, have the honey already in there, and then let them kind of come down in the bowl as I'm whisking this cold honey into the milk. I don't know. It's how I did it yesterday. It's just how I'm going to do it today. But you can do it any way you want. As long as your mixture of milk and honey are the correct temperature when you're adding in your yeast, you're in a good place. It doesn't matter how you incorporate them or how you get them warm, as long as they're at the right temperature when you're going to add it. So let's see. You're going to be doing... let's see, you want this range to end up at 110 to 115 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 43 to 46 degrees Celsius. I'm going to put this behind me and get my stovetop going. If you do not have a thermometer to check your temperature, okay? If you do not have that, that's okay. You're going to wait for the milk. You're going to mix your milk and your honey together. You're going to do it together because you can't see the adjustment in the temperature. You're going to whisk this together, and then you're going to cook it just until you see wisps of steam coming off of your milk and honey mixture. The second you see that, you're going to take it and then you're going to pour it into your bowl. You can go by, this is crazy, you can go by your tap temperature, your tap water. So if you turn your tap water as hot as it can go, okay? Typically, that's about 120 degrees Fahrenheit. It's, I guess what? I don't know what that is, 50 and change Celsius, 50 something Celsius. And that temperature is the temperature you want to match your milk and honey mixture before it gets poured into a bowl. And then that's gonna come down, once it hits that bowl, it's gonna come down to the range or the temperature you need for the yeast. And I know that's super unscientific. I know that that's super unscientific, just checking your tap water and kind of matching temperature by feel, but it works. And if you need that, you can absolutely do that. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, we're doing 85 grams, quarter cup of honey. Okay. So I've got this here. We've got our yeast. That'll be going next. I'm going to bring this up to 160, which I believe is around 70 Celsius. I want a better. Okay, and this should be around the temperature I want it to be. Yeah, no, don't kill the yeast. So hey, it's 160. I really like to make sure that I'm blooming separate. I know a lot of recipes will do like a poolish, which is essentially putting like water and flour and yeast together and letting them sit overnight and kind of pre-ferment. I don't like doing that. I feel like there's just a lot of work that goes into that to find out that your yeast is old and is dead and like doesn't work. I would much rather have the blooming of the yeast happen separately so I can see how active it is before going through the whole process of like putting everything together and making bread and then being like, oh, there's no rise because the yeast was dead. Like it just feels like a big waste of time. Like I would rather waste some milk, some honey, and the yeast and 10 to 15 minutes than like every ingredient that went into the bread. So, and all of the time that it took, like I literally let this cold proof in a refrigerator for 24 hours. I can't imagine like looking down after a couple hours, especially with brioche because of how labor intensive it can be, just time intensive, not labor intensive, but time intensive. And then like looking at it and it like hasn't risen at all. And you're like, what the hell? No. Like I just would prefer not to have that be a thing. Okay, so we're gonna check. I am a little warm, so I'm just gonna let that sit for just a second. I'm gonna turn my oven on and I'm gonna get it preheated because we've got those cinnamon rolls there and they're starting to look like they're getting close to being ready. I'm also gonna put my milk away because it has been sitting out for about 30 minutes and she's ready to get back in that fridge. Okay, we can weigh out our butter at this point, I suppose. If you really don't want to wait, honestly, the rest of the bowl is cold, so you can swirl. And you can also just keep whisking. The more you incorporate room temperature air into your warm mixture, the cooler it is going to get. Yeah, so that's already within range from just the minute and a half that it was sitting there without me touching it. It'll cool pretty fast. Ugh, we can come back to this. Let's do this. So you are going to need, I believe it's 5 grams of yeast, which is about a half of a tablespoon. That is what I'm actually going to go by volume on this one. Volume by tablespoons is sometimes easier, or by the measuring spoons is sometimes easier. Okay, so we've got our warm milk and honey, warm, not hot. We don't want to kill our yeast. If you go over the range, that 115 degrees, 46C, what's going to end up happening is it is going to kill off some of your yeast. It's not going to kill all of it unless it's really hot. And then you are not going to get any of that fermentation going and you're not going to, it's not going to rise. And so you want to make sure that you are within that range so that the yeast can bloom and then continue to kind of go. Now, the sugar that we've added, right, our honey that we've added is really important because it actually it feeds the yeast and then yeast as it feeds, right, so it's taking in those sugars and it's creating carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide is what is going to give you that expansion and all of that air, really lovely air and crumb in your baked goods. Oh, let's see. Paul, I think they might make elastic bowl liners in big enough sizes to do this. They do, and I have tried purchasing some, and they've never worked for me. I've seen some online. I've purchased several, and it just hasn't quite done the job. They're really hard to stretch. The material isn't kind of good enough. If anybody wants to make a product of some kind of thin, really stretchy silicone material or something that can go around rectangular bowls and things like that, that would be great. I've got some that will work for the circular stuff, but I can't find anything that works particularly well for rectangular bowls and cooking stuff. No, I don't have any of those cross hunter. I've made baguette and stuff like that and bowls and all that kind of stuff just in general. But I don't have any of the nice kind of perforated platters and things that they go on. Not platter, I don't know. Frames, trays that they go on. I'm not that serious. I'm just not that serious. I could one day be that serious, but I'm not. Have I tried waxcloth? No, but I do have some. I do have some. That's actually a great idea. I might try that and just see if it can stick. Because the thing about covering is you need to have it with a tight enough seal, that it keeps the moisture and the humidity within the bowl that you're using or within the pan that you're using, so that that bread or the dough doesn't dry out. Because if it dries out at all, once you go to bake it, it's going to keep the moisture inside and it's not going to allow for expansion. You get less rise when you're baking. Now, that's great if you're making like macarons or something like that, because you want them to develop that skin on top to kind of force the steam inside the cookie to kind of create those feet and push up. But if you're trying to bake something, you don't want that crust to be there. And so it can get a little bit weird. It can get a little bit weird. Okay. So now we've got this going. I can already smell her. She's great. And then we are going to get our butter measured out so that when we are, I guess I'll use a bowl. When we're adding butter into our brioche, we already kind of have it pre-measured and we're not worrying about it then. Do everything ahead of time. Okay. And you're going to need, let's see, what do I got here? 170 grams of butter. That's 3/4 cup of butter, if you're wondering, which I believe is like what, a stick and a half, if you are using sticks. I do prefer European style butter for brioche. Kind of makes sense. French bread gets European butter, but it just has a much higher fat content. It just makes it a lot richer. And so that's what I'm going for. Okay, so let's just eyeball this and see if we can get anywhere close to where we want to be. Let's see. Nope, close, but not exactly. Okay. So you can see that this is soft but not spreadable, or at least not, like if I would attempt to spread this on the dough that we had rolled out, it would clump up and not do well. You want it to be softened, not room temperature, so that it can mix into the dough. It's going to keep the dough cold, because as you mix the dough, that friction of all that mixing is going to warm it. And so you're introducing a butter that is slightly colder, but not room temperature, because then it will actually kind of like melt and get greasy, and you don't want that to happen. So that butter it cannot be cold because it actually needs to be able to blend and mix in, but it also cannot be room temperature. You want to have it a little bit warmer than that, or cooler than that. Yeah, Kerrygold. I use Kerrygold butter. I use unsalted butter as well. I know that that's probably, a lot of people like to just use salted butter because then it's like less work. But I actually am like, I am that person that is a control freak and very particular about how much of everything she has in her food. And so this way I can determine how much salt I'm going to have in my food and not somebody else. But I use unsalted butter. But I do love Kerrygold. And it is, in fact, something that I do every time I go to Costco. I pass the butter and I take a look, and when it's on sale, I will notify the internet that it is not a drill and that Kerrygold butter is on sale. And then I proceed to buy way too much of it. Okay, so we've got our butter, we've got our eggs. We're gonna measure out our flour now. We need 480 grams of flour. I'm gonna use the bowl that I had the brown sugar and cinnamon in. I'm just gonna wipe it out. That's 3 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour. Before you measure your flour, if you do not have a kitchen scale, hold on. Let me help you. I just put my kitchen scale away. I'm going to help you out, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how you are supposed to actually measure out your flour when you are baking something. So you will notice, even sometimes with sugar, like especially something like brown sugar, that somebody will say loose or packed brown sugar or something like that. And that is because there is a difference in the volume, there's the same volume, but there's a difference in the weight of the ingredients and how much of that ingredient you're getting, if it's loose or compact, right? So I can take something and I can squeeze it and I can make it a tiny, like a piece of paper, right? And I can make it a tiny little ball. It's the same weight as a full sheet of paper, but obviously it looks like a lot less. So if you're gonna compact it, you're gonna make it really tight. And the more you compact it, the more you can fit into something, which means you actually end up with more weight. So in the same vein of salt, like I was saying earlier, if you scoop directly into your flour, we'll do a little experiment here so I can explain this. So I scoop directly into my flour. We're gonna level it. This guy is 1/3 of a cup. So this is 1/3 of a cup of flour scooping directly into my container. It is 53 grams. Okay. So keep that number in your head for just a second. Now, the way that you're supposed to do this is you're supposed to aerate, and you kind of pick up with one, and then you kind of gently drop, and almost kind of just like shower it down into your 1/3 of a cup, and then level. That is 40.6 grams. So I have a more than 13 gram difference between a scoop and the kind of pour into, like you kind of scoop with one utensil, pour in, and then level. I have a huge difference there, and this is just 1/3 of a cup. So imagine we're using 3 1/4 cups, like that adds up. And for a lot of people, if you are trying to follow recipes and for whatever reason, every time you make the baked good, you're like, this is not what it looked like. It seems stiffer than the pictures or the videos or the whatever, and you can't figure out why, more likely than not, it's that. And it's such a simple fix. It's such a simple thing to change, is just to make sure that you are using a separate utensil. Okay, so a separate scoop. I keep the scoop in my flour. It doesn't match any of the other measuring cups and spoons and things that I have in my house. It's something I've had for forever. You could just keep a spoon in there. It doesn't even need to be like an actual measuring spoon, because its purpose is simply to scoop and pour. And you basically just like that, you just pick it up, pour in. So all of this is really lightly packed, and then this gets poured in. Or you can buy a kitchen scale, and this is specifically for like baking, right? It's specifically for dry ingredients and baking. Or you can get a kitchen scale, and you can just put 480 grams into it, which is what I'm gonna do right now. And then you don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about if something is too compact or not. But it can definitely, like, if you're not careful with how you are kind of measuring your ingredients, it can change it. And this knowledge is something that like bakers know, but like they never tell anybody. I feel like there's so much out there that like you write a recipe and then you like give no, again, context for how you're supposed to be doing things. All right. 480. Now I'm done with this for the time being, because frosting. Okay. Moving along. Okay. I'm gonna pull this into frame. I don't know how much you're gonna be at. You're not really gonna be able to see much. I might turn this on its side just so that you can see it. Yeah, it's a big difference. It's a huge difference. And for people who weigh things in grams, you know how big of a difference that is. Okay, so I'm gonna tilt this. So you can see we've got this kind of like ring going on in there where we've had the yeast there has kind of puffed up and it's kind of mounded up in the middle. So you're gonna see where it's kind of like, it's got kind of a ring and then like gets kind of moundy and like puffs up. And you can also really smells like really strongly of bread. And that is the yeast at work. And so we know this yeast is active, it has officially bloomed, and now we can start adding in our ingredients. So that is what I'm gonna do. Line this up. Okay. I'm gonna pull all of my ingredients to me where I want them to be. I'm missing salt, we need to get that. And I'm gonna grab my spoon. Oh, hey guys, I don't have a whisk in there. Why don't we do that? Again, this is not something that you need to do. I find that the dough comes together better and faster. I use both a whisk attachment and the dough hook when I am making like doughs for bread. Or, yeah. I just don't see how it doesn't take forever if you're using a dough hook to like break eggs and whisk ingredients in. Like what I like to do is I like to use the whisk attachment until it's almost the consistency of like a pancake batter, maybe slightly thicker. And then I will take off the whisk and then add the dough hook and add the last bit of flour in and then let the dough hook do its job. Okay, so we're going to get this going. I'm gonna have it kind of relatively slow. We're just on the first setting, and I'm gonna start adding in my eggs one at a time, please. Do not add all your eggs in at once. Let them incorporate individually. It's gonna thicken it up and make it real nice. I may, in fact, have to turn this up slightly higher just to get the eggs to break, because otherwise they'll float in here nice and they'll never break. It's still just getting moved around. Come on. There it goes. Okay. So we got 1 in, 2. I'm being very dangerous today. And I'm cracking directly into the bowl. Normally I would crack into a separate bowl and then kind of dump them in individually so I can make sure that I don't get eggshell shards into my mixture. Fishing those out, especially when you don't have a transparent liquid, is rough. But we're not playing by the rules today. We're doing what we want. Okay, last one. We got 4 eggs going in. This was not the time to do this recipe. I apologize to anyone who had to go out and buy eggs to make this with me. They're so expensive right now. All right, let's do our salt. I don't typically like to add the salt until I'm starting to add flour in. Salt inhibits, again, we are talking about how we want nothing to get in the way of our fermentation and of the yeast doing its job. So lots of sugar, everything being warm, salt inhibits that. It inhibits fermentation. It inhibits like any kind of bacterial, fungal, whatever growth. And so I like to kind of start making a larger mixture before I'm adding salt into it, so it doesn't kind of like, it's not super concentrated. So I kind of wait till the last minute to do the salt, and that's what I'm doing here. For the salt, you are going to do half of a tablespoon, which is another 5 grams. Again, I use Diamond Crystal kosher salt. I'm just gonna kind of get that guy in there. And now we're gonna start adding in our flour. And I am gonna slow this down or it's gonna puff in my face, and I really don't feel like that. There we go. Okay. And I'm just kind of spooning in a little at a time. And as I see it start to incorporate, I'm gonna go ahead and add more. Don't worry that it looks clumpy and looks a little gross. That will smooth out the more that it mixes, the more that the flour mixes. Bethany, how are you doing? Are you with me? We're almost gonna use all of this. That's how like liquidy and hydrated this dough is. Yep, you're adding in flour. Okay, cool. Cool, cool. All right, so now we're starting to get something that's closer to our pancake batter kind of look. I'm gonna let it just go for a little bit. I also feel like this helps. When I say cut down time, I mean like it takes 20, 30 minutes instead of longer to make the brioche dough and get all the butter incorporated and it like really like get it to like window pane test consistency, and we'll talk about what that is in a minute. I feel like having the whisk in there really starts getting all of the structure and the protein and the flour kind of going and creating the really good gluten structure. Whereas if I just had the dough hook going, it takes like so much longer. All right, I'm gonna do a little more. Okay, so I've used about probably 2/3 of my flour. And I'm gonna leave it there and I'm just gonna let this whisk. I'm actually gonna go up a little bit higher now that I've got the flour incorporated. Bang down my sides a little bit. You can scrape. I don't actually know what I did with my spatula, but you can scrape the sides of the bowl if you wanna bring the flour down. It doesn't really matter just because by the time, I don't know what I did with mine. By the time you have all of the flour in and you've been mixing it for a while and then you're adding butter, like all that flour is gonna come off. So you don't have to worry too much about it. I like how the mixer bowl is locked in. I feel like twisting the bowl in makes it feel less stable, more wobbly. I found that sometimes I can't untwist the bowl from the ones that you like twist in. I don't think I've ever had a problem with like one way to lock in or not. Most of the time it's the fact that this will, when it's like starts going crazy, will actually start sliding around the countertop. So I think more than anything, that's the thing that I worry about than like a bowl coming unstuck. But you can kind of see here, we'll stop so you guys can see the kind of consistency that I'm wanting to work with. Oh, I have to take this off. So you can kind of see kind of what we're going with. You can kind of see that consistency there. Okay. Pull this back in. Also, this can be kind of, there we go. Frustrating sometimes to get that actually clipped in. Okay. So I'm just gonna let that keep going. Again, like you can put it on almost whatever speed you want because we don't have the dough hook in. So you can kind of just like have it doing its thing, and it's a thin enough viscosity that it's like not gonna really kill your motor that bad. But essentially what I'm looking for is I'm looking for that gluten structure to start developing before I throw the dough hook in and slow it down. And right now it looks like it's just a batter, right? But what I want to see is I want to see it start to kind of pull away and create almost what looks a little bit kind of like webbing, right? Where it's pulling away a little bit from the sides of the bowl as it mixes, and it just looks like you've got a little bit of kind of like gluten strands kind of building. And it will start to do that. Like it's almost like it's trying to stay together and it'll break and it'll like start a hole and then that will expand as it's kind of pulling around the sides of the bowl. I'm gonna add a little bit more flour actually. Whoop. Ah, I turned it up. There we go. Okay. Will this be a VOD? Yes. You can come back to YouTube after the live. It will be up. It will be posted. You can come back to this and you can make this in reverse. So you can follow the brioche at the second half of the video and then you can go to the front half and make the cinnamon rolls since we went out of order. Yeah, you want to create a bunch of gluten. It is almost impossible to overmix brioche. There's so much butter in it. Mine in particular is super hydrated, so it is next to impossible to overmix it. Okay, this is kind of where I want it to be. I'm gonna stop this. I'm going to stop this. We're gonna unclasp, unhook. I think that sounds better. Our attachment here. And I'm gonna give it like a shake to get as much of the batter off as possible. And then we're gonna come up the size of the bowl. See, this is what I mean. If I had a tilt head, here we go. Okay. I'm going to set that down. And then I'm going to attach my dough hook. And we're gonna go ahead and get this going. And at this point, you can just dump your flour in because this dough hook is not going to whisk anything back up into your face. So we can just dump that in and let that incorporate on its own. Okay, I'm noticing that my cinnamon rolls are about ready to go in the oven. Lick that whisk. It's raw flour. No. That's a no. That's a yikes for me, dog. It's just raw flour and egg. Raw egg, raw flour. This is not the time. This is not the time for that. Okay. I'm going to move these into frame. And move this out of the way. So these are our cinnamon rolls right now. There you go. So you can see they've puffed up considerably. These are about to be some big cinnamon rolls, that's for sure. We're already up against the plastic on this side. So these are now proved to where I want them to be, and it is time to put them in the oven. This is going to be interesting. I might have to pull out. I get to use all of the things in my kitchen today. I'm going to have to make the frosting in the second KitchenAid mixer while these are going in the oven, because this is just going to have to keep going for a while. So I'm actually going to pop this off. And we are going to bake these guys in the oven. Raw flour is a bad thing to eat, yes. Yeah, we are not supposed to eat raw dough. Did we? Absolutely. Should we have? No. It is not as simple as, oh, it doesn't have egg in it, so it's fine. Raw dough is not, or raw flour is not good. Raw flour is not. What elevation is the new house at? It's high. And yes, it will affect my baking. It'll affect my cooking and my baking. All right, we're tossing these guys in. I've got it at 375, 190 degrees Celsius, 375 Fahrenheit. And they're gonna go in for about 22 to 28 minutes. I'm gonna set it for 20 minutes and then I'm gonna check on them. So we'll do our timer, because if I do not do this, not only do I do this just in regular life, but now that I'm doing a cooking stream and I have other things that is actually taking my attention, I will forget that this exists, and we don't want that to happen. So I've got a timer to remind me when to take those out and when to check them. Yeah, the altitude is going to affects how fast your water boils, like the temperature at which your water boils. It's gonna affect, like if I'm making caramel, that's gonna get super affected. It's gonna affect my baking. I'm gonna need to adjust leaveners and things like that. If I'm using baking powder or baking soda as leavening, I'm gonna have to adjust that. There's gonna be quite a few of adjustments, but I feel like we can get there. Okay. So we've got our dough going. I do actually want to scrape down the side of this real quick. Grabbing a spatula that has already been used and rinsing it off. Okay. I'm going to scrape some of this flour. The flour is not getting down low enough, and I just want to make sure that it incorporates correctly. And I also don't have a tilt head, so we're going to have to go in at an odd angle here. You're going to let this go. Like, let this just keep churning until you start to see it come away from the sides of the bowl. Once you see it sticking to the sides of the bowl and then pulling fully away from the bowl, right? So right now, essentially you're gonna have kind of a knob of dough that's wrapped around the hook in the center, and then it's essentially flat. And is not coming off the sides of the bowl at all. It just kind of is like just looks completely flat across, right? So what you're looking for is the sides there, just around the top. We're not going you don't have to go all the way down to the bottom. Just at the top there, they're gonna start actually forming strands, like glutinous strands, and they're gonna start pulling away from the top of the bowl. At that point, that's when you're gonna add the butter. It can take somewhere between 10 or 15 minutes of mixing. I've had it take longer. I don't think I've ever had it take less than 10 minutes, but I have had it take longer. And I've found that this mixer, it does actually take longer to get to that point. The classic mixer does not take as long. So even mixer to mixer, it will have a different time that's a different adjustment time and a different time with which you're going to need to keep mixing to reach that. But that's what you're looking for, is you're looking for those sides to not just kind of be uniformly around the bowl. You're gonna want to see them kind of pulling away from the bowl, but just at the top. I have a smaller tilt head mixer and I don't think it's big enough, but I have a new appreciation for the tilt watching you scrape. Yeah, like I really like that I can move that up and then have full access to the bowl. I do not have that here. Also, I mean, part of it is also that I'm using the really tall bowl. The smaller one, I'm just too scared to use, to be honest. But the tall bowl also is like kind of stopping me from having a lot of access to the, like down in the bottom of it. But I actually like, yeah, the classic I really like. I just, the motor is really old and it just can't keep up with brioche. You didn't miss the cooking. We've got cooking going on right here in the oven. And we are halfway through brioche. We've bloomed our yeast. We've started our dough. We're mixing it. We got all the flour in, but we still haven't gotten to the butter part. Bethany, how are you feeling? I know that brioche was your nemesis. Are you feeling comfortable right now? Are you feeling confident? Yes, altitude will mess things up, but it just means that I have to adjust to that. It doesn't mean that things are just going to be different a little bit. Unsure exactly when to add butter. Is it possible to add it too early? Yes. Yeah, it's possible to add it too early, but in the end, like in the long run, it's not going to end up mattering. It's just a consistency thing. Like you want to build up enough gluten that the butter actually will get trapped and spread within all of the dough instead of it kind of getting pushed around in the bottom of the bowl because the dough is not thick enough yet. Like you need to develop enough gluten that it will actually hold on to the butter. Like I'm still not pulling away from the bowl. Here, I'll show you guys. I wish that there was a way to see further down into this bowl. Let's see. I don't know how much you can actually see.
Slide it to the left edge. All the way to the
Corner.
Yeah,
like here? Ooh, not there. Where are you going? I still don't think you can see very well. I'm just going to take it out. Yeah, well, I got to do this, though, if I do that. Yeah, you can't see very much. Let me just take it out. This is not ready yet. But we can show her off a little bit. So this is essentially where I'm at right now. I don't know if you can see. Let's see. You've got the camera. It's not like uniform, right? We don't have a uniform mixture here. It's got a lot of kind of graininess. We're not smooth at all. It looks really wet, and it's going to continue to look wet, but not this wet. And if you're mixing, if you notice, like it still looks like pancake batter a little bit, and I've got a little, like it's doing a little bit of gluten kind of structure. I need to be on the top. Okay, so here. So I've got, if I'm pushing against and pulling, I've got a little bit of structure. You see how quickly it's breaking off the top there? It's not really holding on and creating much of a line. So that's how I know like we're not at like there's not enough gluten in this yet for me to add butter. It's not far off, it's just not there. Okay. I'm not sure if that was helpful, but trying to give you some information. Okay, back on. Ugh. Oh. And let it go. I could make it go a little faster. I don't like to have this going over a 4. 4 is supposed to be your bread dough mixing speed. So any any stand mixer that you have, 4 is the bread setting. It's not listed as the bread setting, but it is the bread setting. Right now I have it at a 6. It's going a little fast, but because this is such a wet dough, I'm not super worried about it. It'll help develop the gluten a little bit faster. Bethany, it'll get there eventually. I wouldn't be too worried about it. I wouldn't be too worried about it if you feel like you added it like a tad early. As long as you get to your window pane consistency by the end of it, you're gonna be okay. Like, just let it keep going. It needs so much more time than people think that it does. And saying like, just beat it or mix it or whatever for 10 minutes or 15 minutes at a time on either side, like, isn't usually how it works, because things like temperature and the power of your motor and the speed at which you're mixing and how active your yeast was, like, all those things are going to determine when that gluten is going to develop enough. So you kind of have to eyeball it. But yeah, you want to see it start to pull away from the sides of the bowl before you start adding it. So it's starting to do it now. I'm on the cusp of being able to add my butter in. But I do also need to start getting this together so that I can make my icing, frosting, whatever we're calling it. That is a huge compliment. Carl Sagan would have watched this stream. Will the new kitchen have this much space? Yes. Yes, luckily it will. We have to upgrade some of the appliances, but it's pretty good. Okay, this is where I wanted to be to start adding butter in. We're gonna just let that sit so that I can get this, because these are gonna come out in about 10 minutes, and I wanna make sure that I have the frosting done. Should we just not care about the frosting yet? I should finish the brioche. I don't want to leave it. It's ready for butter. We're going to start adding the butter in, and then we could just let it mix, and I'll go back to this. If the frosting goes on a little bit after they're out of the oven, it's not a big deal. Okay, so I've got my brioche spatula here. I'm going to start adding about a tablespoon or about 14, 15 grams of butter per addend per like in little sections. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to add a little bit at a time, and you're just going to watch and wait until it fully incorporates. You'll see it kind of spread out and get sucked into the dough, and once it gets sucked into the dough, you can add another piece. But you want to go a little bit at a time. We do need better lighting in this bowl. That is absolutely true. I lost some butter already. I'm going to have to take it from that back plate. Huh?
You slide it back. So it's under that way. Yeah.
You want me to slide it here?
No, just where the white one is. It doesn't really matter.
Okay. Where do you want me to?
Just don't worry about it. Just keep going.
I mean, I can move it.
No, don't worry.
You told me to put it on the edge of the...
Yeah, just the edge of it. The lighting of the stuff. The lighting's better where the white one is because the light is red.
Okay. I moved it. And I actually want a spoon instead of this, or a knife. That's too big. Okay. So we're gonna do another big chunk here of butter. Okay. I'm just gonna pop her in. It's gonna get picked up and it's gonna get pulled around. You don't have to worry about setting it in a certain spot or any of that. It's just gonna get grabbed onto by the hook in the dough. Okay, another piece. And you're gonna notice that it's going to immediately start smoothing out as you add that fat in. it's really going to get stuck on to as it gets incorporated into the dough, that fat is really going to help kind of suspend all of the molecules that are in the dough with like fat kind of around it, and it'll get much smoother. Another chunk. That was probably a little bit too big, but that's okay. Anything is good with enough butter. That is very French, and I agree. If you feel like you needed to incorporate faster and you need to like save some time, you can kind of spread it out a little bit and make like a flat piece. So like if you've got like a chunk, just like flatten it out a little bit, and then put it in, and it'll spread in even faster. Up to you. The thing about brioche is it's not difficult to do. It just takes a long time. Like, it's just knowing when consistency is correct. And it's less about it being like super intensive or very technical. It's just all about giving it time and letting the dough do what it needs to do, and not like cutting it short. These cinnamon rolls were crowded in this pan. Pretty good though. I'm gonna give a cinnamon roll to my son because he really likes them, and he's gonna be like, whoa, this is a big one, because I usually make them smaller. They smell really good though. I can smell them. Okay, I'm gonna let that mix for a little bit. Do we have any questions about anything that you've seen here today? Whether that be the cinnamon roll making and baking, or the brioche mixing. The kitchen does smell delicious right now. I'm very, very, very excited. How do you purchase the food that I'm making today? You can't. Okay, so thoughts on different flavors. You can flavor your cinnamon rolls differently in a bunch of different ways. You can add pecans. Like if you toast and like chop up a bunch of pecans and put pecans down on the brown sugar cinnamon mixture at the same time, and then roll, you'll have like the cinnamon rolls kind of studded with like pecans, which could be really nice. You can do Nutella. I've seen people do Nutella. If you find like a babka recipe, then, and I've seen both I've seen both chocolate babka and pistachio babka. A babka filling can also be spread because a babka is essentially brioche, right? And you do exactly the same thing. You spread it in the same way, you roll it like a cinnamon roll, and then you slice the roll down the center and you twist that. And that's what gives you the babka and gives you those kind of streaks and stuff like that. So it is a cinnamon roll with like an extra step. You're just cutting it differently, kind of. And if you want to use a filling from a babka, you can definitely put it in a cinnamon roll. Any kind of jams, like people who've done I've seen people who've done like blueberry cinnamon rolls. So you could do like a jam in the center and like spread that down to give it a fruit flavor filling. And you could also change up the icing. Or frosting. So if you want to frost it with a different flavor, so like this is cream cheese, but I could do a lemon or a lavender or a rosemary. So if you did if you did like a lemon curd and then like a rosemary icing, that could be really nice. Or a blueberry icing also could be nice. You could change up the flavor in a lot of different ways. A lot of different ways. All right, let's give this a look-see. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go into my stovetop, or into my oven right now, stovetop. I'm going into my oven right now, and I'm going to check this. I'm going to go into the center of the cinnamon rolls, and I'm going to check what the temperature read is. Whew. They do not look like they're done yet, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, we're still low. Let's see. Yeah, we're still a little gooey. I'm reading 146 Fahrenheit, which is too low. So I'm going to toss these back in. I'm actually going to flip them. Let's turn these in the oven and get them in the other direction. They're actually really close to being done. I'm just going to give this another like 3 minutes. Okay, I'm going to give that another 3 minutes. I don't know if you could see what I was doing behind me, but I was looking for a temperature or a texture where you kind of put your thermometer in. You can use a toothpick or a really sharp knife or something else that is like kind of a thin. If you have like a probe thermometer or something like that, you can just kind of slide that in and see what the texture is. If anything comes off like doughy, kind of like anything that's like doughy comes off, like kind of comes away, it's not cooked all the way. But you're also looking for something that's around like 180 Fahrenheit. And I'll give you that temperature right now because I want to make sure everybody has everything. So like 82 Celsius. So you're looking for something that's like around 180 or 82 Celsius for the internal temperature in here. And that's how you know that it's cooked. Carryover cooking will finish the rest of it and bring it up to 190, give or take, which is about 180 Celsius. So it doesn't have to necessarily come out completely clean. If you get some pieces like that, like if you kind of poke the thermometer in or a toothpick and then you bring it out, if there are some pieces on it but they're textured, if they're textured like bread, the carryover cooking will finish it for you. But if they're still doughy, then you definitely want to keep cooking it. All right, I'm behind on butter here. Almost done. This is actually looking really good. Got like one more piece of butter to put in. But I'm seeing like this pan that I'm using is a little bit thinner than some of the other pans that I know are out there. It's kind of a cheapy one. And so I know that it's getting more heat through the metal, like especially the outside buns, than would typically really like. And so these are going to cook faster. They're basically done. They are cooking faster than what you might be cooking at home. That's why I've got that range, that 22 to 28 minutes. These are on the lower end of that range because the metal pan is very thin. Okay, last piece of butter. My timer is done. Let's do both. Ugh. Okay, something else you're gonna see. I'm gonna move the mixer out of the way. Jesus. Okay, I'm gonna keep you at a 4. Actually, I want to put the cinnamon rolls in frame, so I'm just gonna move it for you. Oh, thank you, honey. Never mind. My husband moved the camera for you guys. Started moving things around so you could see it. I cannot believe no, there's a 4. Okay, I was gonna say. You're taking the butter around. There it goes. Okay, so here are our rolls. You'll notice they did pop out a little bit. It's just because of how stuffed this pan was. But if you'll notice, see how the centers have kind of come a little bit away and they've separated from. That's definitely cooked. As these cool, they're going to kind of condense a little bit, and they've expanded right now because of the heat. But as they cool, they will come back down, and they'll start to kind of fall back into themselves. If you can press the centers and there's resistance, they're cooked. If you press the center and it just kind of squishes the whole thing down, they're still doughy on the very inside, and you can put them back in. But these are done. And we can make the frosting as soon as we're done with our brioche, which is pretty close to being done. Okay, I'm gonna set these off to the side. Honestly, I could probably touch this pan at this point, but we're just gonna be safe. Okay. This is to remind myself that it's a hot pan, otherwise I'll touch it by accident. We're moving our mixer back in the frame. Go this way. There you go. I do feel, honestly, like, let's see if we can. Here. Oh, come on. There. Yay, we can see inside the bowl. So you can see how this dough now has all the butter in it. And you can see how it's incorporated. And now we've got it pulling away from the sides of the bowl. You can see where it started, that line. Okay, I'm gonna stop this. You can see where we started. This line, like right where, oh goodness, that was a horrible place to stop this. Let's get that back around. So you can see that, where? Like right down, I can't even put my hands in this bowl. Okay. This line here, why is this so hard for me? This is annoying. There we go. Immediately better. You can see the line, essentially, of where the dough is. Why? I can't do things backwards. This is the problem, is I'm looking, I want you guys to know, everything is mirrored from what I'm looking at and trying to accomplish. The camera is the opposite. And so everything that I'm touching is the opposite, and my brain's not working. So can you see this? This is the line. God damn it. This is the line here of where the dough started. And when it was still like really kind of had not come together, was not smooth, didn't have a lot of gluten development. And now it's pulling away from the bowl all the way down here. All the way down there. So it started up here, and now it's like way down here. And you can see kind of where, like how far down that kind of like pulling away has gotten. So it starts pulling away up top, then starts getting even more and really starts pulling away. You're going to let it mix until almost completely coming away from the bowl at the bottom. That's where you want it to mix to. And then I guess let's do a texture test here so you guys can see, again, kind of what we're working with texture-wise. So we've got, you can touch it. It's a little sticky, but it doesn't really come off on your fingers that much. And it moves around, right? We've got a lot of gluten structure, but you can see how it's kind of still breaking. And it's still a little mottled. We're not fully smooth yet, but we're really close. So this is like 5 minutes away from being done. Maybe a little less. I'll probably let it run a little long, just for the extra structure. Okay, let's get it back going again. Okay. And we're off. That's so incredibly frustrating. Live pull away action. Yeah, I don't know if you can see. Can you see in the bowl now if I do that? Like, can you see it pulling away from the sides of the bowl? Where it's almost down to the very bottom, like it's already coming, like it's pulling away almost down to the very bottom at this point. This is probably a no-no, but we're gonna do it anyway. I don't know if you can see in the bowl. There. That's so wrong. Woo! That was a workout. Hold a heavy mixture on the diagonal while it is mixing. Yeah, so we still have, I'm gonna set that down. We still have, it's pulling away, but we still have a nice spread kind of along the bottom of the bowl. You almost want it to kind of be like ball up, and you can see it's still connected at the bottom, but all of the sides are now pulling away. Like that's what you're looking for. And then if you want to start testing, specifically Bethany, just because you're probably a little ahead of me, if you want to start testing to see if your brioche is ready, you're going to want to get your hands either oiled or put water on them, just like lightly dampen them with water. So like throw them under a faucet, give a little shake, and go back to your dough. And you're going to want to take your dough and you kind of grab and pick it up and then spread it. And as you kind of hold it and spread it, you'll be able to tell if you've got that window pane, if you can see light through it before it starts to break. And again, you're looking to make sure that that mottling is gone, and that you have like smooth, like nice glutinous strands that are like, you'll see them. It'll be like nice and smooth, and you'll literally be able to see some of like the strands kind of be like working. And I say literally see the strands. You're not going to see like individual strands of gluten like on a molecular level. You're not going to see that, but you'll see the structure, and you'll see that it's kind of like in strips, like in strips of dough as it's going. I'm not sure how much that makes sense, but I can show you once we actually get there. We're almost there. Yeah, this is there. Okay, so I'm going to start doing my window pane tests. I'm going to get my hands wet. I'm going to attempt to show you guys this. I might have to take that completely off. We'll see. Okay, so I've got just damp fingies here. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull this up out of, no, I can't. I don't know which way to do this. I could just pull a piece out, I guess. Here, we'll do this. Okay, so this is not quite there yet. You can see that I do, like, I could technically stop here. This is not good enough for me, but this is our window pane test. You can see the light coming through, right? So you can see like there's my fingers through the, and that is about a minute off. Like I would keep doing this. You could stop here. You can see how smooth this has gotten. But there still is a little bit of tearing. It's like playing with slime. I have gack in my house, friends. I just aged myself tremendously. So you can spread. This is actually really good. This is really close. But you can see almost like some of this stringiness. Like you can almost see how it looks kind of like strands. But I can see this pulling away from them, almost the bottom of the bowl. It's kind of grabbing and pulling and doing everything that it should be. And then I'm gonna do another, we'll do another little guy right here. And we're kind of getting almost opaque before we lose that. Whew. And then there is some, as you can see, there is some, but most of it is not sticking to me. Like it almost is like if you were playing with like your kid's slime, where if you just kind of press it to itself, like you could essentially pick it up and then like put the rest of it back in if you really wanted to. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna wash my hands like a normal person. But I'm gonna just let this go for like another minute and then we're done. That's too fast. There we go. If you do oil on your fingers instead of water, it will stick even less, but I just don't care. And I would prefer to have water on my hands than like oil, than like olive oil or neutral oil of some kind. How are you feeling, Bethany? Or anybody else? Is anybody else cooking with me today, or is it just Bethany? You're on the spot, no pressure. Okay, yeah, this is perfect now. I don't know if you guys can see that. I'm gonna put the light back on the bowl. Where does he have this thing now? Where did he put it? Good Lord. Is it on this guy? Oh my gosh. He moved the camera from here all the way over here because I mentioned the frosting. I don't know how much of that we can see. You can't see that. Oh, this is incredible. Also, the angle is going to be not as steep because it's further away. All right, I'm just going to take her out and you can see where I am. So you can see where does he actually have this thing? Okay, moving everything around in my kitchen. Here we go. Opposite? Opposite. Good Lord. Hey, we get it. Okay. You can see that it's fully pulling away from the bowl at this point. I know the lighting's not amazing. But as it's mixing, it is fully pulling away from the bowl. And I literally, like, I know where it was originally mixing up at the top. That line where we started is still gonna have some kind of tacky and maybe some dried dough there. But the bottom where it was pulling away is like, it's basically clean. Okay? So it's basically like clean down there. So I got this guy. So if you can see that like the original line of mixing there is still kind of tacky, but down on the bottom of the bowl, it's coming away very clean. Okay. Whew. Goodness. Okay, so we're now going to get that out of that bowl. We're going to butter a different bowl. Usually what I would do is toss this into a separate bowl and then let this proof back in this bowl, just because I like how large it is and I like that it forces that structure to kind of go up instead of out. But today we are going to actually proof it. We're just going to proof it in the smaller bowl. This needs to be buttered. So in the same way that we buttered our pan for baking our cinnamon rolls, we also need to butter this guy. Usually what I do, because I use more than a full packet of butter, is I just take the wrapper and I put it in the bowl and then I move that around until it's buttered and ready. And then my hands aren't gross. Yay! Nothing to waste. Okay, so now I have a buttered bowl. She's nice and shiny. Wrapper can go in the garbage. My hands are still clean. And this is gonna go in here. And now, I guess if you go back to what I was showing you guys when I first got the brioche out of the refrigerator, you can see how different of a texture this is compared to what came out of the refrigerator. And like I said, this butter here is still room temperature. It's going to sit in the refrigerator and it's going to really, really harden up. And that's going to give your brioche, not only is this going to continue to develop gluten, that butter is also going to make this a much firmer dough because it's chilling. Okay. What I am going to do is I am going to get my hands wet again. Okay. Yes, we're both my husband and I are left-handed. Okay. What I am going to do now is I'm actually going to kind of pull and create this. What am I going to do? It's kind of like turn and fold. So like if you ever made like sourdough or other breads, I'm essentially doing a turn and fold. This is really common with pizza dough as well. And essentially what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying, like I don't want this to have this texture on the top. I want this to be nice and smooth and coherent and consistent across the top. So you have kind of like a nice skin for it to then kind of rise together. And so what I'm going to do is take this and you basically just kind of scoop. So you take fingers, go up and over. You're going to work relatively fast because this dough is sticky, but you can touch it. And you're just going to kind of turn the bowl. And as you turn the bowl, you're going to grab, pull up, and go. Grab, pull up, and go until you have all of the sides kind of pulled. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take it and you're going to flip the whole thing over. Whoop. It's actually stickier than normal. Maybe I did need some butter on my fingers. And essentially what it's going to do is it's going to give you just a more consistent rise and a more consistent proof. I'm going to do that one more time because I'm not happy with how this turned out. Oop. And the bowl's tilting on me. I almost feel like I need a dough scraper. Okay, that's better. I'm happy with that. I don't want it to just kind of be poured in. I want it to have a nice consistent top, for lack of better terminology. Okay, so that's where I am. I don't want it to move too much in there. And I'm going to grab another one of my, I usually keep a couple of them just packed. They do get moisture on them, so I like to try to dry them out before or like switch from in to out before I reuse them. But most of the times these don't touch food. And just let that be that. So this is going to sit on your counter. This is your brioche. This is going to sit on your counter for about an hour, depending on how cool your house is or warm your house is. If your house is on the warmer side, an hour is fine. If it's on the cooler side, you might be upwards of like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, depending on how cool your house is. But you're just looking for that volume. You want to see it actually start to kind of double in volume almost and actually start to proof. And once you see that change in volume, you're going to gently pick up your bowl and you're going to walk it to your refrigerator that you have already pre-moved things out of the way so that it will fit in your refrigerator. And you're going to just gently lay it and sit it down in your refrigerator, and you're going to leave it there overnight for 24 hours. Overnight, I think the least amount of time that I would cold proof the dough is maybe 8 hours. You can go up to 48 hours. Like if you forget or you don't have time, like if you were supposed to do it at the 24-hour mark and make your cinnamon rolls and then something came up, you can wait until the next day. It's just going to be a stronger yeast flavor. So like even more bready and maybe a little tangy, because it's been allowed to ferment for even longer. 24 hours is my sweet spot, but if you wanted to, you could do 8. You could just do a simple overnight and then like make them in the morning, or you can wait 2 days to do it. It'll just be a stronger flavor. So I'm going to set these off to the side. I'm going to set this off to the side. I'm going to let it proof. And now we're going to make our make our frosting for our cinnamon rolls, which have now cooled off. So that frosting is not going to melt well, but that's okay because this is for a YouTube video. And honestly, we don't really eat the frosting in our house. So we're horrible people. We like to eat cinnamon rolls without frosting. We don't really, my family doesn't have very big sweet teeth. So we tend to just kind of like, this already has sugar and cinnamon and it almost feels unnecessary. So we don't actually put frosting on ours usually, but I am going to make it and I am going to do at least half of these with some frosting. Oh, I am stuck in between the bowl here. So for the frosting, I have cream cheese and mascarpone cheese. I also have some lemon for lemon zest. And my zester is over here. I have some vanilla. I have some orange blossom water, and I have some cognac. I also need powdered sugar. Okay. And let me take this back off. Essentially, this guy is just all the ingredients go in, and then you mix it. The powdered sugar does go in a lot of time, or it's going to kind of puff up in your face. But by and large, like all of it's kind of going to get dumped in, start being whipped, mixed, and then the powdered sugar is going to kind of go in and incorporate. And so I'm going to weigh the ingredients directly into this bowl, or most of the ingredients directly into this bowl. Okay, so for the icing ingredients, we're going to do 2 ounces or 65 grams of cream cheese. We're also going to do another 2 ounces or 60 grams of mascarpone because it is less dense than cream cheese. Okay, I said 65, didn't I? Okay, cream cheese. I'm going to zero out my kitchen scale and move to the mascarpone. Which I already kind of used because I made some whipped goat cheese the other day. Let's see. So we want about 60 grams of this. If you want to do a full cream cheese icing, you can. Just change out the mascarpone. Instead of mascarpone, use cream cheese. So it'll be 4 ounces of cream cheese, or about 130 grams of cream cheese. And then you're going to want to add additional vanilla, just like an extra like half a teaspoon of vanilla to kind of make up for the fact that the cream cheese has a stronger flavor than the mascarpone. A half a teaspoon is what, 2.5 milliliters? Just like a little bit of extra. Measure with your heart. It's fine. It's vanilla. It's not going to hurt anybody. It's just icing. So just, yeah, you're just going to want to like oomph it up and just vanilla to taste. Okay, so now we've got our lemon zest. We're going to do about a 1/2 gram, which is about 1/2 a lemon. Got my microplane, and I am just going to zest this up real nice. Okay. And that's all you want is just the zest. Honestly, you could do as little as the powdered sugar, the cream cheese, and the vanilla and call it a day. All of this extra stuff is fully optional. I like to add a little bit of lemon zest. I like to add some orange blossom water. This is super mild. It's not like, I know that Nielsen Massey also does like a rose water, then it's like really, really strong and you kind of have to be careful with it. But this is very mild and subtle, and it's just like adds like a little extra into it that I think that it like gives just like that tiny difference from orange to lemon that I think adds like a nice citrus component without it being overwhelming or like too one of the two. And then I like to also add a little bit of cognac or some kind of brandy. Not a lot. Like weird, this is a teaspoon. Like we're talking 5 milliliters. It's nothing crazy. It's just kind of to give it a little bit of interest. And I know that it feels like it's a lot because like honestly the cinnamon roll should be the star of the show, but I want everything to kind of be cohesive. And again, like the cinnamon or the cream cheese for me is like too strong. And I think that like to me, it fights with the cinnamon roll, and I want it to kind of blend in with the cinnamon roll and enhance it. And so that's kind of why I do crazy stuff with the icing. Okay, so this is going to be, let's see, a 1/4 teaspoon, which is in my dishwasher right now. Oh, goodness. I might have to measure this with my heart or my eyes. Oh, found it. Okay. And then it's 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Not sponsored or partnered or any of that kind of stuff. I love Nielsen Massey products as much as I like Diamond Crystal Kosher Salt. They are really the only extracts that I use. Probably the only ones that I will ever use. They just do such a good job of sourcing and using and making, like, blending flavors. And they have everything. Like, everything. And I appreciate that. The cinnamon roll that gets you drunk. I don't think a teaspoon of brandy that gets spread across 12 cinnamon rolls is going to have that impact. I might over pour this just because this is a really big. Oh, here we go. Okay. Nice. Okay. 2 shots of cognac. My name is not Sandra. I'm gonna mute you for a second. I need to cough. There we go. It is best to ice the cinnamon rolls when they are just out of the oven. We just had our timing not correct because we got to talking about the brioche while we were making it. So they're not getting iced immediately. Okay, let's get this guy going. And we're going to add, where are you? 140 grams of powdered sugar, which is about 1 1/4 cups of powdered sugar. And I know, okay, we'll do a little mini bowl here. Weigh this guy out. Ooh, you do a bread pudding and it's 1/4 cup of bourbon for the sauce after it's baked. That sounds good. I like it. Okay. So I'm going to spoon just a little bit at a time because it is going to puff in my face if I do too much powdered sugar. You're just doing kind of like a half a spoonful or like a spoonful, and once it incorporates, you can just do another one until you've got everything in there. Sugar, egg, butter, and bourbon. That sounds like the sauce that goes into like a butter tart, or like it's like the filling of like a butter tart or like a pecan pie. It goes in after it bakes. So you've got egg going in after it bakes. Is it hot enough that it like cooks it? Just out of curiosity. Okay, almost done with the icing. I am going to get all of the ingredients in, and then I'm going to turn the speed up on this. So that it can really aerate. I don't know if you can see, you probably can't, but we can get that fixed because I can do this. So you can see that this is like a little off white because we put the cognac in it and we put some of the extracts like the vanilla and stuff in it. And so it's actually not like a white like an icing would typically look or a frosting would typically look. But if I whip it, it's gonna lighten in color and it'll look more like what you anticipate going on top of a cinnamon roll. Okay, Tomcat, thanks. Yeah, I'd love to see what that looks like. You look forward to cooking these with your partner at some point? Do it. Have fun. Okay, so for anybody that made any of these with me today, if you made the cinnamon rolls or if you made the just the brioche portion of this, how do we feel? Do we feel like, do we have any questions? Do we feel good about what we did? Are we confident that we could do this again? Okay, so I'm happy with that. That's where we end up. And then essentially what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna, usually I would use a spatula for this, but we're just gonna use a spoon. And I'm just gonna spread that on top, little by little. If these were still really warm, it would get like melty and kind of melt down into any nooks and crannies. But it'll still be good. And I'll take a cinnamon roll or two out so you guys can see kind of what they look like and how we did. But you can see, let me move this out of the way and put this in here. You can see that they've come down considerably. Oh, that frosting's good. Okay. So we've got, like, they're way lower. So like I said, like as they cool, they kind of come back and will settle. And that's kind of what you're looking at now. I'm gonna do half with and half without. Now we're gonna take one out and eat it. And then let me also have a quick conversation with you guys about storage, the proofing process, reheating, freezing, all that kind of stuff. I wanna grab, I'm gonna use an offset spatula to just kind of separate these out a little bit. Now that I cannot see the lines because I covered them with, I just cut this open. Okay. So I'm gonna move this in. We'll just put it on a paper towel. I don't have a plate. All right. So here's our cinnamon roll. So you can see kind of what we look like here. It's going to be really soft. Ooh. And bready. And now I'm just eating it. Can't see straight on because I covered it, but you can get an idea of what it looks like as you're tearing. Yeah, this I like, and I will say too is it's like I like soft middle, but you can see like it still has a breaded texture in the center. I don't really like gooey centered cinnamon rolls. The way that like Cinnabon makes it, and it's like liquid inside. I appreciate that those people exist. But it just makes me feel nervous because I feel like it wasn't cooked all the way. And I don't want to be like eating like eggs and things that like have not been cooked all the way to temperature. And so I really like, it's nice and soft, but you still have like, it's like dense, soft, but still definitely cooked. It still definitely has like a bread texture. This is my ultimate cinnamon roll. So you're valid, but not in this house. That's okay. That's okay. I get it. Is this the first time you've done a cook along here? I love this. No, I think we've done quite a few of them already. We do them once a month. It's the first Sunday of every month. Lately, we've been doing them at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or Eastern Time Zone. And that's been working pretty well for us. Has it been a year? I feel like I've done like 10 or more of these. We've done more streams than the cook-alongs on this specific channel, but the cook-alongs as a series specifically, we've been doing for about a year. You have not missed them because you can go watch any of them on YouTube. A Little Spoon on YouTube. Okay, so we've got our cinnamon rolls done. I'm enjoying eating this, but I really should. I'm gonna just stack it. I'll come back to it later. I'm gonna talk to you guys as I talk with my mouth full. I'm gonna talk to you guys a little bit about freezing because I think it's important to know how to store and freeze these guys. The thing that I hate about brioche, as much as I love the way that it tastes, as much as I love the texture, as much as I love everything you can possibly make with brioche, it goes stale so fast, like so fast. You can do a couple of different things to combat that or to use that to your advantage. If you wanted to, you could make a loaf of brioche, use it for whatever you wanted to use it, maybe eat the whole thing in one sitting. I mean, you know, we listen and we don't judge. You can use it, and then the stale brioche that you have for like the next day or two, you can use for French toast. So essentially you can slice your brioche, you can put it in your kind of like egg custard mixture, and then you have like a really nice brioche French toast. It has to be stale in order to become French toast, because if it was fresh brioche, it would just kind of squish down and start like falling apart, and it wouldn't be pretty. So if you have brioche and you've baked it and you realize that it's going a little stale and you don't want to just eat it on a sandwich or on its own, you can still use it. You do not have to toss it. You can make French toast out of it. You can, if you're feeling up to it, you can, in fact, cut these cinnamon rolls in half and make cinnamon roll French toast. I mean, I'm just saying, you can do it. So if you have them on your counter and the next day or the day after they're stale and you're like, well, now I have the cinnamon roll and I don't know what to do with it, just turn it into French toast. There's nothing wrong with that. You can also put it in the microwave or into the oven on a low temperature or a low power setting and just kind of re-get all of the heat going to soften them up a little bit. I prefer to do that in the microwave on like, I have a bread setting because like this microwave got a nice microwave. But if you just put it in the lowest power setting, so like 10%, and then go to like 15-minute increment or 15-second increments, 15-second increments, you can kind of get that reheated without it kind of cooking and making the bread stale. Because if you do the microwave at too high of a power level or for too long, it will really expand all those water molecules and cook those water molecules with the microwaves. And then it like solidifies. So I don't know, like if you've ever tried to reheat bread in a microwave and it is like harder, it's like really soft. And then as it cools, it gets harder. And you're like, I'm literally eating like a brick right now. What happened? It's because you microwaved the water molecules in the bread so much that it dehydrates it. And then as it cools, it gets like really hot or really hard. And that's not great. So we don't want to do that. What I like to do with the cinnamon rolls to keep them fresh, like at all times. Like I've literally kept them in the freezer for longer than I should have 4 months, and like they still taste fresh baked when I reheat them in the microwave. I freeze them. So I will bake, I freeze all my bread, honestly. I keep all my bread in a freezer. But I will bake, let's see, I put them in here. So you can see, yeah, I was not lying. We don't do frosting. But I will bake the cinnamon rolls, and then I will put them on a baking sheet. So like we basically eat to our heart's content whatever I've made that day. And then whatever we decide that we're not going to eat after they've been baked, I will pull them out individually and I will set them on a tray so that they are not touching each other, and I will freeze them. Once they're fully frozen, I will take them off the tray and I will put them into a baggie. I would tell you that if you plan to do this way, make the icing and then put it into a container in your refrigerator. It can sit in your refrigerator. There's so much sugar in it. It can sit in your refrigerator for like up to 3 weeks. So you have like essentially 3 weeks to eat 12 cinnamon rolls. I feel like that is attainable for all of us. And so you can put your frozen cinnamon rolls and then you can heat them up in the microwave, low power setting, 15-second increments. Take out your icing and kind of spread that on top. If you want to heat up your icing a little bit, also fine. You can like put it on top of the cinnamon roll, and then you can cook the cinnamon roll or reheat the cinnamon roll at the same time you're reheating the icing, and it'll get nice and like gooey. And you can kind of make them on a case-by-case basis, right? So like one at a time instead of having like a huge tray. Because the icing, like I said, has so much sugar in them, it will stay sticky and it will stick to the insides of your bags and it will still get everywhere. So it's almost better, like if you do want to have icing with your cinnamon rolls, to make it separately, just keep it separate, freeze these as they are, and then make them, kind of reheat them individually. If you really, like this is also something that you can do. It's not my recommended practice. But if you really don't want to, like, if you really want to have like fresh baked cinnamon rolls every time, what you could do is you could roll this up and you can literally freeze them right after you've rolled them and cut them. So essentially what you would do is you would roll your cinnamon up into that kind of like cinnamon roll log that we had earlier. You cut your individual cinnamon rolls, and then those go into like onto a baking sheet to freeze them. You have frozen uncooked cinnamon rolls, okay? Those then need to come out, and you can bake them in different dishes. So like, let's see. If you wanted to, if you had like a croquette or something like that, or even like one of these little guys, you could do like a single cinnamon roll at a time and like just put a cinnamon roll in. So take a frozen unbaked cinnamon roll from your freezer. You could put it in here. You have to let it defrost, and then you have to let it proof. Okay, so because you haven't done that second proof, you have the first proof that you're doing overnight in your refrigerator, then the brioche gets out, you roll it, and then you do a second proof that's like a 30 to 45 minute proof of your cinnamon rolls before they go in the oven, okay? So if you're freezing it before you've done that second proof, you have to remember that you need that second proof. You would basically put it in here, you let it defrost. It'll probably take 2.5 to 3 hours to defrost. Then it's gonna start to proof. If you remember, or go back in this video to what these guys looked like when they were proofed. I lost where, oh, did he move it? He did move it. He's moving the camera everywhere and I don't know where it is. So you saw that they were kind of like really puffy and they were touching in here. That's going to happen. That's going to happen, and that's what you want to see. You want it to kind of be like, almost like wobbly. Like if you had the cinnamon roll from the freezer in here and you let it proof, and it defrosted and then proofed, when you kind of shake your bowl back and forth, it's gonna kind of have like a little bit of a wiggle in it. That's where you want it to be. And then you can go ahead and you can bake it. Because you're doing a single cinnamon roll, or even if you wanted to do in like a loaf tin, you could have 3, right? Because this is essentially like, this is essentially this guy here. It's like a third of it, right? Like 1, 2, 3. So you could essentially do 3 cinnamon rolls at a time in this guy. and you just put them in, right? You're gonna butter your dish, put them in, let them defrost, let them proof, put them in the oven. They're all gonna have different cook times, so you're gonna have to pay attention to that. This is gonna cook faster because it's heat on all sides by itself. It doesn't have anything next to it helping it insulate against the heat. You've got this guy where you've got 3, but it still is only like a single row. You don't have any of the like center sections. And then you've got your big guy here where you've got all 12. You're just gonna have to pay attention to it. The thermometer is helpful. Pressing the tops and seeing if they like squash back down into, or if they stay pretty firm is like a good indicator of doneness. But you're gonna kind of have to keep an eye. I'd probably say this is about 15 to 17 minutes. This is probably 17 to 20 minutes. And then these guys are the 22 to 28 minutes. But by and large, like you can cook them in different containers. Something to be aware of if you decide to do it that way. I'm gonna put these back real quick. If you decide that you want to freeze them before they're baked and then make them individually, I know that it sounds like you're getting fresh baked cinnamon rolls, and you are. The brioche is definitely gonna be softer. However, the longer they're in the freezer, the less rise you're going to get when you bake them. So I would say that if you were going to do that, I would not have them in the freezer longer than like 2 weeks, or you're just not gonna see that rise. And it happens with almost all baked goods that you want to have rise from, especially if you're using chemical leaveners like baking soda or baking powder. I find that they just don't work quite as well after they've been in the freezer. It's kind of the same thing. And so it's going to be like that second proofing and getting it to the correct proof is going to be really important when it does come time to bake those. Honestly, this feels easier to me. Move that back in frame. I keep pulling it in front of me. This feels easier to me to just bake them and then freeze them after they're baked and just heat them back up in the microwave. Like that to me just feels easier. But if you really do want to have like fresh baked cinnamon rolls, there is a way to do that. I wouldn't keep them in the freezer for too long. I would try to eat them relatively quickly. Okay. I'm not sure if there are any other questions. Are there any other questions that anybody has? I think I covered most of it. Will this raise my A1C? Yes. Yeah. This was very insightful. Good. They would not last that long in my freezer. That's what I figure. Like it just feels like you're already doing it. Just kind of like have everything go, like make the cinnamon rolls in one go, bake them, and then just freeze them and reheat them as necessary. Like they're just as good. Like I mean, I guess I could reheat one of those to show you guys what it looks like, but yeah. Thank you. Thank you, American. Okay, we're gonna move this guy out of the way so that I can say goodbye to everybody. Thank you very much for joining me today. For those of you who are here for the live, I'm essentially doing an outro so that we can end this video and it can be used in the playlist on YouTube. But I'll stay and chat for another couple minutes. Geez, I thought I was going to just lose that off the side of the counter. I'll stay and chat for another couple minutes. My husband will probably come on and eat a cinnamon roll or two while we just chat. For about 10, 15 minutes, we'll start to clean up and then we'll head out. And I'll say goodbye to y'all. But for right now, I just want to say thank you very much. If you joined me here during the live, or if you are joining us at a later date and this is a playlist that you found and you really want to learn how to make brioche and cinnamon rolls, hopefully I've answered all of the questions, said all of the things to kind of help you better understand what you're looking for, how things are supposed to feel, how they're supposed to look, how they're supposed to taste, and that you get a better understanding of kind of what you're working with when you are making these like brioche, when you are making these kinds of like pastries. Yeah, we do these cook-alongs. If you're curious, we do these cook-alongs the first Sunday of every month. And they're really fun. I'll post a recipe about a week before. You can get the ingredients, and then you can come back. We stream on Twitch and on YouTube. On YouTube, it's at my A Little Spoon handle. And for the Twitch stream, it's actually on my husband's channel, and that's just twitch.tv/leopard. So you can come and you can join and you can hang out with us here. And then you can find me also on Instagram. That's at @a_little_spoon. Yes, there are underscores. It is because I am late in the game to doing all of this stuff. And so I don't have just like, everything smushed together, unfortunately. But you can find me there at Instagram. I post recipes also on Instagram, not just photos. So you're not going to just like see the picture and then not have a recipe and have to go search for it on my website. I do also have a website. It's www or like https://www.alittlespoon.com, but just alittlespoon.com is what you can type in, and there's a bunch of recipes that are like this and also not like this. I have entrees and side dishes, desserts, cocktails, all of the different kinds of things. If you are interested in more of the context of cooking, it's a great place to go. There are a lot of FAQs that you can read through about all of the recipes, about the ingredients, how they work together. If you substitute, why a substitution might do something good or bad, or how best to substitute in a recipe. I try to give a lot more information there. And there is always more information on the website than there is in Instagram, because Instagram does not allow for me to have as much space as I'd like to have when I'm writing. So, but you can get the recipe in both places, and you can kind of keep up with me and contact me in either location. I'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions or any requests for new recipes, I'm happy to take them, happy to talk to you guys. It's been a pleasure. If you are interested in supporting, obviously like and subscribe in any of the places that you can find me. I also do have a Patreon. It helps support not having ads on my website. I feel like it's really important to me to not have ads on my website. It's kind of the first place that food bloggers go to make income, is to monetize their site, and I really don't want to do that. So Patreon, not only do you guys help me support me for not having ads on the website, but also support the work and all of the cooking and stuff that I'm doing. And we do have a lovely group of people, a wonderful group of people that are also attached. Once you become a member, you're attached to a private Discord server, and we just kind of hang out and talk all day. It's like having like little Slack channels, and we just like chat, mostly about food, because food is the best. But if you're interested in supporting in some way, whether that be just supporting and lurking, or supporting and actually being a member of the community, also welcome, and I would love to see you there. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you guys next time. Bye. Oh, the next one is going to be stuffed cabbage. So that'll be yummy. I'll see you guys. Bye.